Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Researchers Celebrity powered by Empowering Science Foundation. Today we have Dr. Sudha with us. A brief about Dr. Sudha. She has done her bachelor's in microbiology from Delhi University and then master's in biotechnology from Banastali Vidyapeeth, Rajasthan. Before doing PhD, she worked as a quality assurance associate at Baxter, and then the research probably took her to the PhD, which she did at Institute of Genomic and Integrative Biology, IGIB, Delhi. Then she was a research analyst at Larval, and then joined University of Texas Medical Branch, Galveston, as a postdoc and did her research scientist research also there. And presently, she is clinical trial manager at Medpace Technologies. With this brief, we would like to welcome Dr. Sudha at the platform.
Thanks, Raja. Thanks for this lovely introduction. I'm glad to be here.
So the traditional question, how we start this conversation is like, how and when you decided that you wanted to be a researcher?
I think that takes you way back to my schooling. I would say one of my favorite subjects was biology. Um, I just loved reading everything in biology. It was just my favorite subject. Having said that, my mom is a doctor, so she's also in the medical field. But I was mostly intrigued and in awe with my grandpa, who was a botanist. So, every time we used to go, every summer I used to spend time with him. I used to see how interesting his life is. He's maintaining a garden throughout the house, in the front, in the back. He does all kind of experiments, grafting. He has all these exotic plants, and he keeps talking about the research he had done, way back. Imagine, with some rice varieties. That used to, literally, that had an impact in me, I guess. So my interest in biology, being around him, our favorite time pass would be he would take us to a botanical garden, and I would just point at any of the plant, and he would tell me the scientific name without fail. He was that awesome. So, I guess that's where my interest in biology started. But looking at my mom and her busy schedule as a doctor, as a homemaker, I was sure that I don't want to be a medical doctor, but at least I can say that, I really liked biology. So a different aspect, maybe some gene manipulation, something, creating something different was my idea. So I guess that is what motivated me to just single-handedly look for any kind of undergrad when I had just, stepped out of school. So I was looking for biotechnology, and I don't think they had biotechnology as an undergrad in India. I think now they do, but at that time they did not. So I guess that was the thing. I thought the next best thing was microbiology. So I just took up microbiology and went with it. By the time I ended it, it was an honors course. We had just exposure to so many aspects of microbiology. It was, again, I was really intrigued. I was so interested. And then, the course, how it starts. You just start applying for masters, and I was only looking for masters in biotechnology. So that's how I ended up doing that. And I guess that's how I was interested. And I'm still passionate about biology.
So when you just completed your master's, you had like, a bit of researcher, because I'm not sure if they had this dissertation where you go and do things. Because in microbiology, you have done a lot by that in your bachelor's itself. What made you think that you really wanted to do a PhD also?
Oh, okay. So like anybody who gets into a bachelor's, especially in not the traditional fields of zoology or botany, but maybe the applied field of microbiology and biotechnology, I guess it is a natural progression that people do PhD. But I think for me, during my bachelor's, I worked in the summers at Ranbaxy. Just wanted to know what exactly in microbiology are they doing in the industry. That quite a bit of exposure to people, their thought process, the people who are working there. During masters, I decided to go for an academic institution. I came to botany at Delhi University. There was a very famous scientist who was working on genetics division in botany. So I decided to do, a 2-month summer course at him. That again, you interact with the academicians, the other researchers, and their thought process. So I kind of had a industry academy kind of an exposure and thought process that people had. Plus, soon after my master's, I did not want to immediately step into PhD. I really wanted to know. I had spent 5 years. What is out there for me if I decide to step out and see? Commit to another 5-6 years of education. Let me go and see what is there outside. So I started working as a QA microbiologist for Baxter. It was a really good 8 months. The whole plant was being set up at Manesar near Gurgaon. They were setting up the QA labs, microbiology, chemistry, calibrations. Everything had to be built up from scratch. So it was a really tremendous learning experience for me. I was the youngest, I was like the youngest member in the team. Everybody was an M-Pharma from other industry. I was like a kid right out of school for them. So I was working as a QA microbiologist, but I put my hand, I got real opportunity to wet my hands and feet into chemistry, into calibrations. It was so much learning, so much to soak up. What are SOPs? How are instruments set up in a lab? How do you calibrate it? How is it, monitored on a regular basis? Everything, industry standards. Is that what I learned from there? But the other thing I learned there is from my fellow workers is that if I keep working in industry, I will be at that particular level throughout my life. I will probably be a senior QA person or a QA lead in microbiology, but that's about it. So that's when I realized if I want to move any further, I better get my PhD. So that was an eye-opener for me. I enjoyed working, but I realized I need a PhD. And I also, it was so much work there because it was being set up. My boss was a tyrant. There was so much work. I used to work, I don't know how many hours, I think 12, 13 hours a day. I used to work on the weekends. The QA team of 5 people would always be there on the plant all the time. It was good for learning, but then, really not good if, it was taking a toll on my health. So I knew I need a PhD. I better move out from this place, get my PhD, because I had that junior research fellowship, which would lapse if I did not make use of it. So that's when I decided to just move out and quickly get my PhD.
So there was a lot of thought and work went into the decision of doing the PhD. So how the journey then went?
So this 8 months experience was an eye-opener for me. I had a JRF. I went to all the academic institutions to talk to PIs who would be interested in taking me. I came to IGIB. There was an interview for the JRFs. I went in and just rocked that interview because I did not spend reading in the last 8 months. So I had no fear of losing anything. So I came across really bold, sold and told. I guess that's what they liked. So I was invited to talk to a few of the top PIs there because my interest I had made very clear was in immunology. Ever since I was doing, biotechnology, my last year was immunotechnology. I kind of am interested in immune responses. But when I spoke to them, I realized all they want is a person who would work in the lab 24/7, who should not have any other extracurricular activity other than science, because we are here because we are passionate about science. We should live science. It was something like that. But having worked in the industry, I know if 8 months can take a toll on my health, I knew I wanted to be in a lab which was not high profile. I don't know. Many people thought my decision was wrong. Many of the PIs I talked to, I kind of met with them later and they thought I made a wrong decision. But looking at, I was called on a weekend to talk to him and he was proudly showing off that everybody's there in the lab and working. And that was a no-no for me. So I knew exactly what I wanted. So this short break of working in the industry, I realized I need a sanity and peace of mind when I spend at least 5 or 6 years in a lab. I need flexibility in my life. I'm very passionate about science, but it's easy to get burned out very easily. So that's why I ended up joining a low profile lab, assigned a PI who had not interviewed me, but I was recommended to him as, that he's starting to take students and he's a very good person at heart. And that's what was more important for me. So I joined my mentor, very respectful man, soft spoken, um, always open to my ideas. It gave me a lot of opportunity and I should say scientific freedom to select my topics, select like you select all the four subtopics to work on. Everything was mine. I had the freedom to write my papers like how I wanted to write it, fail, write, and learn everything by yourself. So, low profile lab, but ended up doing good science. Had four first author publications by the time I left my PhD. That was a good achievement for me. Um, so it was overall, it took me a little longer because they wanted me in the lab. I had the publications, but as in India, we do not have any, what do you call, the graduation committees or the ones that decide that, hey, you can walk off. So I ended up spending all 5 years using up my entire fellowship. And then finally I did get my PhD.
So now this brings us to two very important questions. The first one is the work-life balance, as you mentioned. And the second one is what should be the criterias when a researcher is looking for PhD, that the lab they are interested in? Because with your experience at Researcher Celebrity, what we want to do is like to help them to make up their mind that what are the parameters, or now people say the red flags and all that. What are the things which they should consider even before approaching a person or after that?
That's a really good question, Raja. We all struggle with these. Again, my answer may not be custom made for everyone because every person is different. But if you say, from my perspective, if I was to select a lab, um, firstly, of course, the science is important. So you should know what you're passionate about in science. Like I knew I love to, look at immune responses, how human immune response works against infections, against allergies, bacterial infections. So I knew what exactly I wanted to do. But when I had decided what would be my area of research, I looked at all the PIs there. What I encourage everyone to do is, before you make that decision, definitely take an interview or appointment with the PIs because you want to talk to them one-on-one and not in an interview, setup. So you do want to know what they. So I asked very frankly what their expectations were from me. That was a big thing for me because it's better to know somebody's expectations. It's like getting into a marriage, you better know your husband, what he's expecting from you. That's a lifetime commitment. A PhD is equivalently a 5 to 6 years. It's a chunk of your life commitment. Better know what they're expecting from you. Because when I asked that question, I got really, truthful answers. Hey, science is what should motivate you. I'm not here to give you PhDs. I'm here to make scientists out of you. That was a red flag for me. I want my PhD if I'm working for 5 to 6 years. Um, your only curricular activities should be science, and do not get married. I had no plans of getting married, but then just that because somebody mentioned that, it was a red flag for me. Who are they to decide what my personal life is going to be? Um, then, if anybody says you're supposed to be here 24/7, or I went to the lab even on the Saturdays and Sundays, but that was my wish. I, I wanted to be there. Nobody told me that you have to come on the weekends. So if somebody says you have to, at least for me, it's a deal breaker. I like to play badminton. That's what I was telling the scientists. Oh, I love to play badminton. I like to read books, especially science fiction. And I got a really bad, look. So For me, if you're going to spend 5 years, it better be comfortable. It should not be a traumatizing experience. Talk to the students who work with him. Catch them on a working day when the PI is not around, or just go to the lab. And I just roamed around the lab. People working there, you don't even have to talk to them. You just have to observe them, how they feel about it. So definitely I did all of that, because 8 months when I worked there, I enjoyed the work, but everything else was on a hold for me. My mom was doing my PhD applications because I didn't have time. So I knew exactly what I wanted. So I think for every person, whatever, find out what is your non-negotiables, and
Yes.
then go check out the lab and the PI and the students. Because doing great science and working for a top-notch scientist may not always be rewarding if you are miserable.
Absolutely. Second point, when people say that, you brought up this like about PIs saying, about the marriage, about the pregnancies. So this brings us to another topic where people are now talk about women in STEM, women in
Mhm,
research.
mhm.
Your experiences and your suggestions for, upcoming researchers.
Okay. So I've actually not had any bad experiences so far, maybe because I was a little careful in choosing where I wanted to work. But
Mm-hmm.
soon after my PhD, there was a little bit of lag because my husband was doing PhD elsewhere. So I was waiting for him to come and join me. And I got this opportunity to do something totally different, like work in competitive intelligence from home and everything. We'll talk about that in detail a little later. But coming back to your question, I took a break of almost 2 years when I had a kid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so during PhD, couple of another friend of mine also got married around a month earlier, decided to have her kid, but it did not affect the work she was doing. It was not a big deal in our lab. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
embraced it. So I would say it doesn't affect anything. And for me, I had taken a break after PhD for 2 years, and I was very reluctant walking into a postdoc thinking what the PI is going to think about me, that I have not been in a lab. But I was so surprised that during my interview, the PI I ended up joining said, "Oh, that's excellent if you've taken a break for family. That's what I encourage all the women to do. You should wear it with pride. Say that, oh, I took a
Yes.
break and I had my kid, or I took care of family." And that actually opened my eyes to the difference in scenario and women in research when you see back in India. I'm sure things have changed because it's been almost more than a decade since I left. Left India and the academic scenario there. But it was an eye opener, and I was so encouraged by that one sentence of hers that she says, "Oh, wear it as a pride. It looks good on your application when you say that you took a break." And that's
This
what I
is Now, this is something which we have heard from one of our researcher celebrity, Professor Subha Srinivasan.
mm,
She has obviously what you just said. She is someone who has walked it and promote her students also now, and that's what we see in you also.
yeah, yeah,
But
excellent.
what are the challenges in, like, the practical aspect of it when you are leaving, the lab with a thought, or when you think that in any way you feel that there are limitations when you are thinking of your research or your future goals?
Limitations based on what? The having a family and kids?
Yes.
I may not be the right person to answer this question because, frankly speaking, I have been very fortunate when it comes to family support, when it comes to having a husband who's very supportive. Um, I think I should attribute many of my, all of my, achievements to absolutely very encouraging parents. And after my marriage, my husband is like my biggest cheerleader. He never
Mm-hmm.
lets me settle for anything less. He thinks I'm capable of way beyond. So much belief that he pushes me to do things. So
Mm-hmm.
having that space, having that constant encouragement. Now, I would say that is a plus point which we all need. You need a
Yes.
cheerleader close to your home, whether it be your
Mm-hmm.
parents, friends, whether it be your siblings, whether it be your husband. Then I had my daughter. I mean, when she could speak and understand and be involved in our discussions, and she would say, "Yeah, mom, you can go do it." So, that is what we need. I think
Yes.
there are no roadblocks. The roadblocks are built by us. The roadblocks are built by people we love. The roadblocks, there should be no roadblocks when comes to family and friends. So I have been pretty fortunate. Even now he thinks, we were just having a discussion. He says, Sudha, you just can go for the next step. You're really good at this. And I was just looking at him and I'm thinking that, yeah, this is what's been happening throughout, right? So that's what women need. Having a kid and family, everybody does it.
Why I ask that? Because nobody asks the same question to a man. Men
Yeah.
are married, they leave their kid at the house, but this question never comes to a man. And this is something which so Empowering Science Foundation believes in breaking the barriers.
Mhm.
One of the barrier which is in the society, be it India or anywhere else, be it in research, be it in, either it is in academia or in industry or in any other field, why women have to answer these questions when nobody asks men that, oh, do you have kids, you have a family, then that's the reason why we cannot. And having these debates that women in STEM, women in research is something, what are your thoughts that we should put more emphasis on it, or we shouldn't?
I think the scenario has changed greatly, Raja. I'm sorry, maybe I'm out of academia for quite some time. I may not relate to it anymore, but at least I'm grateful that in industry, people don't care. You
Mhm.
can be 8 months pregnant and give an interview and still get the job.
Okay.
Because it is discrimination. If you are going to ask about your family, how many kids you have, oh, you're going to go on a maternity leave as soon as you join. These are deal breakers. People don't ask this question because this is discrimination.
Okay.
Um, so coming back to academia, like I told you, I personally haven't experienced it, but I have had so many friends complain about it. Hey, husband wife joined the lab as a postdoc. They decided to have a baby. 2 years into postdoc, they are thrown out of the lab. They are asked to leave. Um, a couple of friends have told me that. So that is, I don't know, that is so sad because basic research is so slow. You do research, you get results, you publish it. By the time it publishes 2, 3 years, you can easily have a baby and raise a family doing that. In corporate, nobody asks you this question. It is so fast paced, it is so dynamic, things change every minute, there is so much responsibility, and still work gets done. Means in academia, somebody's thought process has to change. It is the people who are hiring, they have to look beyond, they have to look at qualifications, they have to look at work being done. And they have to stop interfering in those people's lives, and they have to provide a good work-life balance to get maximum efficiency. They are forgetting something. They are not going to get good efficiency from people who are burned out, who are
Yes.
disgruntled, who are depressed. They're definitely not going to get anything out of that.
This brings us to another word, depression. When research is not going the way people want,
Mm,
or the pressure of publishing,
mm,
what were your experiences and what you suggest the audience, the viewers who will listen to this?
Well, during my PhD, I would say I changed at least uh, two of my subtopics twice because things did not work out. But then I was in a supportive lab, you know. I tried out something different. I read, I brought ideas to the table, so I was allowed to do. So I really did not face that kind of an issue. The first postdoc that I did in UTMB was with a clinician who was also a researcher. But I really like her attitude. That's how most PIs should be, irrespective of how many times how long it has taken you to do the experiment, experiments, she would always go back to see how many times we have repeated it, how many times we have got the same result, have we proved it any other way. She would just not sit and look at the graph that you provide her. She would also review the raw data with you. And after 2 years, we realized that the recombinant viruses I was using kind of got mutated to become as similar to wild type. So I stopped seeing the differences between wild type comparisons. But that's nothing for me to be blamed at, because I had all the data. We have weekly meetings, and she understood. She didn't pressurize me that, oh, somehow just brush it up. We have 3 times you have done it. We see that significance, let go publish. Never. That whole project was, we had to shelf it, because we went and got the viruses sequenced. We realized as we keep passing them, they are getting mutated again in the same areas and getting similar to wild type. So we wasted, I wouldn't say wasted, I learned a lot actually. So many animals, so many animal experiments. 2.5 years of my first postdoc. But then that was a learning experience. But the only downside was I was just working on this project. I was not on other projects. So I ended up having not a publication in the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But she and me always decided, hey, okay, if this is not working out, I have another idea. Let's try out that. So we jumped onto something else. So I want most of the PIs to be like that. Whatever is published in science should be authentic, because I think you would have also experienced this. For setting up your experiments, you read hundreds of papers. Yeah. What if people are not diligent with their experiments and you realize, oh my God, I can't reproduce this, and I'm basing off my hypothesis on this? So I always feel the research work should be authentic. It should be, it should be confirmed, reconfirmed. Just how we have industry standards, GCP, GLP, we should have something for academia also. So they just ask us, N, please give how many times this experiment was repeated. How many people are truthfully in writing 3 times? Was it just done once and you have the picture up there? So I have my reservations about what is being published. So coming under pressure, should not succumb to pressure, because this affects anybody who picks up your paper to continue the research. Just think about that.
Absolutely. And this is something which came recently in one of our conversation with Professor Ethan Beer from UCSD. He said if research pressurizes you, probably research is not for you.
Yes.
Your thoughts about a PhD student or a postdoctoral researcher, the project's not going the way they want, what should they do?
Hey, it is like anything else in your life. For example, if something is not going right, and that is the right way research should go. Everything which you put your hand into cannot be gold or diamond, okay? Cannot just being the best publication of your life. You have to try out several things to understand, oh, those things don't work, this thing work. So it's a numbers game. So you better try out everything. You should have the resilience, the patience to go through everything and figure out what works and what doesn't. And if something doesn't work, root cause analysis. That is the essence of everything you do in life. So figure out, go, take your time, read, figure out which step did not work out. I used to tell that to all the grad students in our lab. Just because something doesn't work, you're not going to shelf it. First, you're going to figure out, right, why it did not work. It could be as simple as a reagent being expired, or as simple as you're doing some step wrong. Just go back. And that teaches a lot in life. You don't give up easily. And if something goes wrong, let me just go figure out. There may be an easy fix. And still, if you realize it doesn't work, read the writings on the wall, shelf it. Go to the next project. So yes, if you feel pressurized by research, it's probably not for you. But if you're okay with the ups and downs that it comes with, the analysis, the thought process, the diligence to look back and see what went wrong, the diligence to, go digging and figure out, hey, this could be the issue, then yeah, definitely no.
Okay, so now about the idea of research, we have seen this, and now the cases are increasing.
Mhm.
Researchers, PhD students, moving out of their PhDs as late as 3, 4, 5 years.
Mm.
Some of them just, take their lives off. Very
Mm.
sad, but it is happening.
Mm.
There is this need which people should address, that this should not happen in first case, but what we can do as this researcher community to stop this.
This is a really interesting question, and I have an answer from a high school program. So it's my daughter's school, and they came up with something called a Hope Squad, where they train peers, how to identify if somebody is sad or depressed or anxious about something, and connect them with the right, uh, counselors or stuff like that. Something very similar we should have in the research community too. For I think the university there where I worked, we had post for at least the postdoctoral students. We had a postdoctoral research office. Mentor was there where you can just frankly go and talk about what's happening with your research and things like that. I think for grad students also there must be a program. I'm not aware of it. I did not do PhD here in this country, so something here definitely we do not have something like that in India. We need to have a community with some peers with whom you can share how you feel, and they can identify when they talk to you that, hey, this man has been depressed for so long about the research, and the PI would not let him change the research topic and is battering him for not getting things done, and he needs help or she needs help. And then means connecting them to the counselor and figuring out how to best approach the PI and having a meeting with everybody together to dissipate this. So there has to be some sort of a support group, and especially in India I don't think we have that. Here at least you have the grad students communities there. They have their own groups, I'm sure. They have mental health days, and to talk about anything that they are going through. Some kind of support is needed where your peers can identify if something is not going right.
So, just to add to this part, Empowering Science Foundation help researchers whosoever like contacts us. We have
Mm.
2 psychologists and uh, uh, 2 psychologists and 1 psychiatrist also, because stress is something which is omnipresent in everyone's life. It's just not specially researchers. Everyone is under stress for so many things with this fast-paced world, which is what we are living in.
Agreed.
We do try to help them. We try, and one of the part why we are having these conversations, with you and other researcher celebrities, is to build this community. As like at the end of the conversation, we always say that any audience, any viewer who's watching this, and then they want to write to any of our researcher celebrity, they can write directly to them, because we do provide their informations with that. Or if they want to write it to Empowering Science Foundation, we can put in touch with our researcher celebrities. Or if it is about stress related, then to the psychologist. We are trying, but what we see in India especially, that it needs a lot more effort from every single one. And given the circumstances that especially PhD students don't, what I say always is like, they don't respect themselves enough, because they feel that whatever the PI says, whatever the lab environment is, they have to adapt it to them. And what we believe is that if you are starting under pressure, there is no way that you can going to enjoy your research.
Agreed. And it's
So
great you are doing so much.
it is just a small what we can do, because what we believe is once a researcher, always a researcher, and we don't want to lose even a single one.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Sudha, now when you have seen research in India and in United States, in academia and in industry, what are the suggestions you can give, or recommendations to Indian researchers who are pursuing their PhD and have this thought that they want to settle outside India? Or how should they consider that what are the things, because one of this very important crucial point which comes is like moving away from India, especially given case of United States. It is so far that the approachability even to the family is sometimes very limited, because if something happens, that is what how our brain works, you know. If something bad happens, they cannot even arrive in time. Your experience and your suggestions for researchers who are still in dicey mode, that shall they continue the research in India or move outside?
That's a very good question, but I would like to start off by saying that it depends on what kind of research you're doing, or secondly, what kind of network you have. I have some of my peers who are very well settled in India. They did not even come for a postdoc here in US or anywhere else. So it all depends upon what you want. If you really want to pursue a postdoc outside, then yes, you start applying as soon as your PhD is near closure, and you really want to, you have your PIs chalked out because you know which field you're interested in. Then you are looking for the PIs or who are prominent in that area of research. You apply to them, you set up everything, how to get recommendations. You ask your current PI if he or she is willing to give a good recommendation, then only you suggest their name. That is one big piece of advice. In India, we really do not ask the people we are suggesting for recommendations, we do not ask them. Here I've learned one thing through my friends' experiences, my husband's experience. You need to ask the person, hey, I'm going to put you as a recommendation person for to give my recommendation, and I'm applying for such positions in this lab. Will you be willing to give me a good recommendation? So here people are really frank. You worked with a PI and that PI really doesn't like some aspects of you. That PI is going to say, hey, better not suggest me. You may not get a good recommendation. But in India, when we are applying for postdoc here, we are asking, we just give randomly our PIs, our co-PIs, our probably our master's teacher, professor, whoever. We just let them know it's coming their way. But we never ask this crucial question: will you be willing to give me a good recommendation? And that is key. That could make or break your deal here, okay? If you want to come. That is for people who want to come here. I have a few friends who, while doing PhD itself, are very clear they are not going to leave India. It may be due to family things, or it may be just because they just don't want to go to a new country. But they had they worked on their network while doing their PhD. So even in India, you can do postdocs in really good academic institutions, and then you may be absorbed in those institutions, and you can work your way along as scientists. So I have a couple of friends who's actually a scientist there in India, one in Delhi, one in Pune. So they're doing really good. Okay, so it is all a personal preference whether you want to come out or you don't want to come out. And if you want to come out, there can be several reasons for it. Maybe because the area of research where you're working is more progressed outside, you want to come and work in those high, fast-paced labs.
Yes.
Or it's simply your preference. I just want to step outside and experience the world. It could be anything.
Yes.
But both need to step out.
Absolutely. And I think this is very nicely formulated by you, and all the audience can get benefited out of this, because at now we are at the edge of the conversation. So I would like to thank you with like the richness you have given to the conversation, the experiences, personal experiences, as well as the suggestions, the recommendations, which I believe is going to help so many of the researchers. And I would like to sum up for all the researchers that Dr. Sudha said, 4 pillars of that. Not just figure out your non-negotiables, okay? Be resilient, be patient, and the most important part, be vocal. Communicate with your PI with the lab members. That is something which should be there always. Doesn't matter your projects are working well or not, because this you can always prepare yourself for. And Dr. Sudha, the last closing comment, if you want to say anything to the audience, and before that, I'll just ask, what are your thoughts about researcher celebrities?
Oh, I am really intrigued. Initially, I did not know exactly what all you do, but because of your comments, I realized you're actually putting together a platform where people can share their thoughts, where other people can listen and learn. And based on these comments, you're also trying to provide services to the researchers or the upcoming, researchers or the PhD students. And that is commendable. We all go through experiences. If somebody asks us on a 101, we may just talk to them. But that thought of putting together a platform where they can get exposure to all the different comments and life experiences from other researchers, it's truly commendable. And good job, Raja. That's really good.
Thank you, thank you. But Dr. Sudha, I wanted to ask about, like, when we were Empowering Science Foundation believes in breaking the barrier, and one of the barrier was like people don't consider researcher as celebrity. So we said, okay, let's start celebrating research and named it
Okay.
as Researcher Celebrity.
Okay, that's awesome. That's you're making us celebrities, and
Yes,
that's
yes, absolutely. So today, thank you very much, and you are Researcher Celebrity from now on.
Oh, great.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much for the designation, Raja.
Have a good day.